Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Hello, engagers. Welcome to a special episode of the Professor Game Podcast. Today we have a repeat guest, which is Dave. But before we kick off, Dave, are you prepared to engage?
Yeah, let's do it, Rob. Let's engage.
Let's do this because we have Dave back. As you know, he is an intellectual and creative educator, designer, and researcher who combines games, theory, and technology. He has played games for most of his life, and as a result, he studies game design and teaches others how to use games for education and learning. So very much into our aisle, of course. He also hosts a podcast, which is called Experience Points, and he consults at University XP on games-based learning. And he also leads the Games-Based Learning Alliance, which is a community of individuals who use games for teaching, training, learning, and development. And his interests include professional development, learning theory, technology, and, of course, games. So, Dave, is there anything that we're missing from that intro?
Yeah, so I just wanted to update your audience, Rob, and say that I am teaching right now at NYU in Certificate of Learning Design program, and I'm very proud to be doing that. And like you brought up before, leading the Games-Based Learning Alliance, which you are part of, and just really trying to connect other people that are using games for teaching and learning, and I'm really happy to contribute to the community.
So very, very quickly on those two updates, and then we'll talk about the conference as well, which is one of the main reasons why we're here today. But what does it feel like? What does it look like to be in your class, in the class you were mentioning at NYU? Mm-hmm. And then, give us a little bit more of details. What is the Game-Based Learning Alliance? If people, for example, if somebody wants to join or wants to know more about it, where do we go?
Sure. So the class I teach right now at NYU is called Learning Technology and Tools, and I teach in the School of Professional Studies. And our program is called the Certificate of Learning Design. And I teach a class specifically to teach other people. Usually, sometimes they're faculty, they're professors, but most of the time they happen to be human resources professionals, how to teach online. And because of COVID, this has been a really in-demand class right now because previous things that we had been doing in person, specifically like teaching, specifically for like corporate learning and development, have all been transitioned to online. And a lot of what I do with my students is just trying to iterate the fact that teaching online synchronously using a platform like Zoom is not the same as teaching in person. So we go over a lot of different aspects and strategies and tactics for teaching in an online environment. Some of which I include some games-based learning focus, which is providing opportunities for interaction and engagement with your learners, not making it completely like lecture-based or didactic. So just trying to show individual students that there is a way for you to interact with your students online because it's something that is just good teaching practice, but it's also something that can be done now in a different format because we're all connecting via platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or anything else. And the second thing I want to talk about is the Games-Based Learning Alliance, which you and I are a part of. It's a community of other designers, educators, academics, entrepreneurs, game designers, and other creators who are using games for teaching and learning. The community is one that is supportive of professionals, so people that are working in this field right now. If people in your audience want to gain some more information, the best place to go is the website. It's universityxp.com/community. So again, universityxp/community. You can get a list of everyone that's in the Alliance right now, in addition to what we emphasize and cover. And I hope to see some people apply for membership.
Interesting. Absolutely. I'm sure there will be some people interested in that as well. So, Dave, many interesting things going on in the online world and teaching. Mm-hmm. Many interesting things definitely going around in communities and people getting together in the Game-Based Learning Alliance. But talking about getting people together, games-based learning, there's this little bird that told me that you're also into something called the Games-Based Learning Conference. And what is it all about? Why create a game-based learning conference? What is? Let's start by the basics. What is it all about?
Sure. So the Games-Based Learning Virtual Conference, Rob, is going to be a professional conference. So it's going to be held online because of COVID-19. We can't get together in person. And also because it's held online, we can pull from a lot of different professionals and academics from all over the world. So we're holding the conference April 16th through 18th, 2021. And this is the premier professional event, like I brought up before, for designers, educators, entrepreneurs, instructors who are using games, games-based learning, gamification, serious games, and simulations. It's going to be held over 3 days. And over those 3 days, we are going to be emphasizing the Eastern time zone in the US, although some of our content is going to be live interviews. So we have a couple people that I've secured for interviews. Kicking us off on Friday, April 16th is Dr. Constance Steinkuhler. For those that don't know, Dr. Steinkuhler, she's a professor of informatics at the University of California, Irvine. And she researches intellectual and social aspects of multiplayer games and online games. Her particular claim to fame is that she's the founder of the Higher Education Video Games Alliance and is a former senior policy analyst under the Obama administration in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. So I'm really happy to have Dr. Steinkuhler kick off our session. We also have Tracy Fullerton. Those that don't know Tracy, she's published a very influential work called A Play-Centric Focus on Game Design. And all of those students that are out there right now who are studying game design most likely have used this textbook because it seems to be the seminal work on just designing anything that is games related. She's also a professor and former director emeritus at the USC Games Program. That's the University of Southern California. And then on our last day, on Sunday, April 18th, we have 2 live speakers. So one of them is a former guest of yours, Yukai Chow, who's an author and international keynote speaker on gamification and behavioral design. Recently also spoke at the GameCon online conference. So Yukai Chow will be there on Sunday, April 18th. And then one of my local colleagues here, we also have Jeff Engelstein. Jeff is specifically a board game and tabletop game designer and published a really influential work called The Building Blocks of Tabletop Game Design on specific game mechanics. Jeff does focus on tabletop game design. However, using game mechanics specifically for teaching and learning is going to be a great focus for anyone that wants to use games for educational development. And these are just 4 of the presenters that are doing live presentations. We have many other educational sessions in the pipeline, including one from Rob Alvarez himself. So we hope to see some of you there because there's just a lot of great content, and I'm really excited to put this together.
Absolutely. And Dave, that sounds very exciting. There's those are some of the live ones. Mm-hmm. I will also be sending in a recorded topic. And the big question is, in these times of COVID and everything going virtual, did you create it for it to become a virtual conference, or is it this sort of temporary, at least for now, that you want to create it like that? Like, what's behind it?
So I created it as a virtual conference because I wanted to be able to connect a lot of people from different geographic locations. Like you guys based out of Taiwan, I believe. Jeff is based out of New Jersey. Yeah. I'm based out of New Jersey. However, looking into the future, if this first event is successful, which I really hope it is, I hope to continue it on a regular annual basis because we just have a lot of different professionals that are located all around the world. Rob, I know you're located in Spain, and it's not really feasible for us to get together in person on a regular basis. So I think that, again, if this is successful, which I believe it will be, I hope to be able to do it on an annual basis. And I think that's because our community is truly global, and being able to provide opportunities like this, in addition to what else is being offered, I think is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was looking at getting into. Like, why now? Why do you want to create a game-based learning conference? Do you feel it's a void you're filling? Like how did it come up? What's the story behind getting into this, so to speak?
Oh, sure. So I know that there were other conferences around on games. Specific conferences I had presented at the past have been PAX East, so that's the Penny Arcade Exposition. I also presented at PAX Online. There's some tabletop game conferences like Gen Con and Origins. There are specific game developer ones like GDC, Game Developers Conference. There's also GameCon that was recently held. That's on gamification. I didn't really see a specific conference that combine all of those different areas, but also focused on what I did my doctoral research on, which is games-based learning. And for those of your listeners that are not familiar, games-based learning is the process of using existing games for teaching and learning online. So games are the actual and specific medium that you're teaching. And that's really what I wanted to focus on with this conference. We're pulling a lot of people from different disciplines, but the goal for this conference is to find different applications of using games-based learning for teaching online, because we are now living in a COVID world, in order to develop a more empathetic and connected world. So that's really the first theme for our first conference. How do we use games for teaching online in a distributed environment in order to connect each other with each other, and also to develop a shared sense of empathy between each other?
Huh. So you found a void, you filled it, and you've been looking around the world to do this. It seems like this global community, because it is true that there are conferences that are pretty global, and people travel from all around the world to go to this or that place. But it is difficult. It is really difficult to get to that point. It is really difficult for many people as well to do that travel. I mean, it does imply, if you're not in the region or relatively close, it does imply a significant investment of both time and money. So cheers to that. I mean, there is definitely a void to fill, especially, I mean, many of the conferences that you were mentioning, they were all born to be face-to-face conferences. And I'm pretty sure that in some way, shape, or form, they will be back eventually to being that, which is great. But there is also many things to be said about holding something online where everybody all around the world can do that. I know I know Pete from Gamification Europe and Monica, I'm sure, and Jonathan from GameCon have been a bit surprised. They didn't expect the response that they've gotten from those conferences. But again, I am pretty convinced, at least, that they will, in some way, shape, or form, get back to having a live face-to-face event. So cheers to that. What do you, and in that sense, that differentiation that you mentioned before, is there anything that is going to make what you would feel this conference would be sort of special or different from other conferences?
I really want this conference to be a gathering of professionals and other academics who are not only going to share their work, but also share some really great applicable practices that we can begin taking back to use with our students or organization overall. One webinar I hosted in the past year that I felt was particularly impactful was one called Tabletop Games for Online Learning. And I bring that up because I got a lot of questions about people that were asking me about games-based learning, and me really talking about how I was focused on using tabletop games, but not really knowing how they could use tabletop games now, because we're in a COVID-19 world where we have to teach and connect with each other virtually and online. So what I did was I found some of my favorite tabletop games, board games that I had been playing with my students in the past and playing with my students now. And I found online free applications of them. So what I did in this webinar was I pulled together all of these different games that we were playing in person, games like Hanabi or Wavelength, and found online applications of them. And I showed, one, instructors how to play it and how to administer it. But two, what specific learning outcomes can you target using these games? Like, here are some games that I use right now. Here's how I use them. Here are ways that I think you can use them. And now go forth. I want you to use this information the way you best see fit. So I'm really looking for really practical applications that people can take away from the conference.
So you're looking for a conference that has a lot of applicability, so takeaways, so to speak. How do you achieve that? Because, of course, it is a very, very important process. How do you curate who is going to be presenting at the conference and what are going to be topics and so on? But how are you looking at making sure that content, like, maybe give a couple of examples of what you're looking at in this conference that you feel will be like really, really applicable?
Sure. So one of the presentations we have in the pipeline right now is about immersive events and how they could be done in an online and distributed environment. Jessica Crean, who is one of our members in the Games-Based Learning Alliance, also submitted that presentation. So I'm looking for something like that because Jessica has done a lot of immersive theater before. However, just like a lot of industries that have been impacted by COVID-19, a typical theater event cannot happen this way. So she's going to discuss and talk about how she's adapted really her approach and her content to it being delivered in this online environment. So as soon as I saw that was one thing that I just realized that Jessica knows what we're trying to do here, and she's submitting content and a proposal that best supports that. So I'm really just parsing through the rest of the proposals right now and trying to determine, like what makes best sense for what we're trying to accomplish.
And how is it going to be delivered? Because you mentioned that there are live and there are recorded ones. So how does that look like? Like, I don't know. I'd like to get a little bit into the insides of the conference to get people excited about it as well.
Oh, sure. So I'm glad you brought that up, Rob, because I brought up the live speakers. So the way I've structured it is that it's happening over 3 days. So Friday, April 16th, Saturday, April 17th, and Sunday, April 18th, 2021. At the beginning of each day, there will be a live presentation, and that'll be an interview between me and the individual person who's starting that day during that opening session. And then each day is then going to be followed by a series of pre-recorded sessions. And all of these sessions are going to be available via our conference website. It's going to be released at a specific date and time. And during that pre-recorded session, it'll include the individual presenter, whatever slide deck they may be presenting, along with captioned text, transcribed text, because I realized that since we are meeting in this online environment, accessibility is incredibly important and critical for allowing this conference to be accessible for as many people as possible. So there will be these pre-recorded sessions, approximately 4 of them per day of the conference. And then in between each release of these pre-recorded sessions, there will be an opportunity for all of our conference attendees to network with each other. And we're using a few different platforms in order to have people network with each other. We're using both a platform called Mighty Networks, which is what we use for the Games-Based Learning Alliance right now. Mighty Networks is very much like kind of like a combination Facebook feed and Twitter feed where it's a lot of text interaction between people. But we're also using another platform called Wonder. And Wonder is a way for individual conference attendees to connect via video and audio and network and just connect with each other in a more casual environment. And this is something that was turned on to me by one of our colleagues in the Games-Based Learning Alliance as a way for people to recreate some of what you would experience in a actual in-person conference. I realize that it won't ever replace that, but I think that in the meantime, this is something that could be used to replicate what you would be doing. So the conference overall is structured with one live presentation in the morning or at the very beginning of the day, followed by a networking opportunity via Mighty Networks and also Wonder.me, followed by a pre-recorded presentation, followed by networking, followed by another pre-recorded presentation, followed by networking, and then with some breaks in between. But generally, that is the structure of it. Each day leads off with a live presentation, and then there's opportunities to network, and there's also going to those pre-recorded sessions. So that's how I've structured it up.
Makes sense. And question about the pre-recorded sessions, will they, like, for example, let's actually get into that first. Like, I know that there is people have to pay for conferences. So how does that work? Like, what are you charging for? What are you not charging for? Like, how does it work? And of course, once you get into a paid tier, you say, well, it's going to be pre-recorded. Is it just going to be available for that day? Like that mechanic, how does it work in this case?
Sure. So what you get with the conference registration is going to be all of those opening sessions, the educational sessions, which are pre-recorded, and all networking access. And I realize that a lot of people do not have a lot of access to professional development funds, and those people that do have funds are going to need to make sure that they can access it or they can use it towards events that are going to be the most useful for them. So for this conference, as soon as you register for it, you're going to have access for all of this content, all of these educational sessions indefinitely. And I also want to respect the actual content creators here, so the actual presenters themselves. Those presenters know that they're providing content for the presentation. However, they will always and continually maintain copyright and access to their own content, and they may share it with anyone that they want. They've granted the conference the ability to use this royalty-free for the conference duration, but I also want all of the conference attendees to know that when they register for this conference, they will have indefinite access to all of this pre-recorded content now and in the future. So it's an investment that I feel like is more applicable than an in-person conference, because once that conference is over, unless you've taken notes, you won't have access to that material in the future. But for this specific conference, including those live sessions, which will be recorded and also transcribed, you'll have access to that now and indefinitely into the future.
That's great. Sounds like having a lot of good content accessible for a pretty long amount of time. That's always something good. So Dave, is there anything else that actually you mentioned, that this is a paid conference and people can pay for their tickets and they will have access to all these things. How much does the conference cost? Are there different prices depending on when you purchase your tickets? Or are there any, sort of current opportunities for people to get their tickets? How does that work?
Sure. So people can register for the conference at the conference website, which is gblconference.com. That's GBL as in Games-Based Learning Conference.com, gblconference.com. Regular registration is $297 right now. However, there is early bird registration that is available until March 16th, 2021. And if your listeners would like an additional discount, they can get another $20 off if they use the coupon code ProfessorGame at checkout. So again,
Nice.
The conference website is gblconference.com. The early bird registration is available until March 16th, 2021. And the early bird registration saves you $50 off the registration price. And your listeners can save another $20 off of that. So the conference cost comes to $227 if they use the coupon code ProfessorGame, all one word, at the conference checkout.
Nice. So listeners, you have this opportunity now as well through Dave to access the conference with the coupon code ProfessorGame. If you do it early, and I know you will not have, you won't have 2 months to register once you see this, but you will have some time to make your decision, check it out, see who are the current speakers, what's that looking like at this point, and make your choice about that. You will have time for that, and you will have definitely time to register for those opportunities that Dave was mentioning. And Dave, I think we've covered most of the conference, but is there anything else that you want to make sure that you mention before we take off?
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know that I hope that this conference in general will be something that's going to be really applicable. Like I said before, I want individual conference attendees to be able to take what they learned from this conference and being able to apply it in whatever field they work in, whether that's corporate learning and development, higher ed, K through 12, or really any other form of teaching, training, learning, and development, or even game design. So that is the focus of this conference. This is the inaugural year, and I hope that it just serves everyone in the community as well as it can be.
That sounds great. Absolutely great. So thank you very much, Dave, for offering this conference. We, at some point, I know through the Game-Based Learning Alliance that you mentioned a couple of times already, you mentioned that you were thinking about doing this. I said, well, yeah, that sounds super interesting. And from a very, sort of selfish standpoint, that sounds even better. Mm-hmm. But I know it takes a lot of work. So I always tell this to conference organizers. I like to thank you personally for taking time off your personal time or your professional time as well to organize a conference like this one. I am sure it's going to rock the game-based learning world, because whatever Dave gets into, I've seen his work, I've seen his commitment, his dedication, and I'm sure this will be absolutely fantastic. So thank you for dedicating your time to creating this conference, creating all this content for people to benefit. And again, remember, all you have to do if you want to register is go to gblconference.com. So gblconference.com. You take a look at that, see what's going on there. If you're interested in registering, don't think about it for too long, because there is an early bird discount. And of course, if you want further discount, you can also use the coupon code ProfessorGame, all one word. So I think we covered it all. I think we are done talking about the Game-Based Learning Conference for today, because there will be a lot to talk about once we are there on April 16th through 18th. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Engagers, it is absolutely fantastic to have you here, because as you know, this podcast makes sense because of you, because we have you with us. And that is why, as you probably listened on this episode, there is a special opportunity for you, for the Engagers. If you're interested in participating in the virtual edition of the Game-Based Learning Conference, all you have to do is go to gblconference.com and use a special discount. The discount for the Engagers is the coupon code ProfessorGame, all one word. So all you have to do is go to GBL, as in Game-Based Learning, GBLconference.com, use that coupon code Professor Game and get a special discount, which can be added on top of the early bird if you listen to this and take action very, very soon. Hopefully, I will get to see you there and we will have very interesting things to talk about. And there might be something special out there if you share that you went to the conference and used your coupon code Professor Game. Contact me on Twitter. Go to Rob Alvarez B on Twitter. Let me know, show me some proof of that, and you might get a special surprise for the engagers. And of course, before you click continue, before you go on to your next quest, remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.